Hey, what's going on, man? Thank you so much for downloading my brushes. They're on your email, and if they're not on the email, they're in the spam box, so make sure you check that. I wanted to do this little video to kind of talk about my top 10 brushes and do a little tutorial about my 4 different approaches, so make sure you watch the whole video so you can really get the most out of these brushes. And really the first thing are the 2 presets. So if you click, if you right click, you can kind of see all of my different brushes. I have smoke, birds, fucking trees and shit, and those are really useful, but the majority of time I'm actually using my top 10 brushes, which are right here. So you go to window and then you press 2 presets, and you press this little button right here, replace 2 presets, and then it asks you if you want to save them. You press no because you're a fucking loser, and then you press Angel's Tools. And then right here, the first brush that we have is the sketch brush. So the sketch brush is what I use for pretty much all of my lines, and it's pretty much the best brush that I've found yet, because if you just use the standard round brush, I mean that's good as well, but it's always been way too boring for me. So this brush actually allows you to not only have like a straight line, but to also have these kind of like really sharp edges, kind of like mimicking a pencil. And the first thing that you need to make sure that you have is, if you go to the brush settings right here with window, you need to have shape dynamics and transferred turned on pen pressure and then on 0%. So make sure that both of these are set on. And by the way, if you're using Procreate, all of these brushes are still going to use on Procreate, but you're going to just have to do different settings. So these 2 are going to be really important, because the sketch brush actually allows you to go from like a really kind of like a grayish tone to like a really black and big brush strokes. So that's what I use for all of my lines, and this is pretty much my basic approach and kind of process. Is I start with my sketch brush, and then I have the brick brush for pretty much the basic coloring, and I'll just, with the highlight brush, I'll add all the little details and kind of like make everything pop. So that's pretty much my first brush, which is really the sketch brush, and I definitely recommend you for all of the lines. And then we have the brick brush, which is pretty much my main brush when it comes to painting, and it has this like really subtle kind of texture, but at the same time it's really good for blending and stuff. It's pretty much, where you kind of get my sort of style. So I'd recommend you to, experiment with it a little bit. It might be a little bit hard at the beginning. And the best thing about this brush is that not only do you get like a soft blending, but you also get like a really hard edge, and you get a little bit of texture. Because I'm kind of against, you using a lot of texture, like, for example, let me see, a brush like this, because that's gonna be so messy that it's kind of like, bro, we both know you're not on that level. Why you gotta use this brush? So the big brush is really the most standard one that I have. And then we have the airbrush. The airbrush is, your standard kind of like standard soft brush. I'm not a big fan of those either, because they kind of like end up ruining all of the structure that you already built. But I still have it for some gradients and stuff. And then we have a hard round brush, which is just the generic, I'm basic as fuck brush. And actually a cool trick that I can show you is, if you press the airbrush or the hard brush, and then you press Alt and right click, which I actually have right here on my stylus, and you go up or down, it's gonna change the hardness of your brush. So by you using a hard brush, you can immediately turn it into a soft brush just by clicking this shit. So that's really fucking useful. And then we have the hand. The hand is pretty much what I use for some texture when it comes, for example, like the hair. Like this right here was done with a hand brush, and it's a great kind of like combination with the brick, because you can kind of see how they both have this really subtle texture. But the difference is that with the hand, you're really gonna have this kind of like really wild sort of edges. So if you've ever seen this sort of texture, this was done by the hand, and it's one of my favorite brushes when it comes to the hand, to the hair. And then we have my messy brush. Now I've kind of like gotten this from artists and stuff, but don't tell nobody. But this is pretty much my approach for my messy approach. And I pretty much just start out with what looks like shit, and then I kind of transform it slowly into a painting. And it's all done at the beginning with my messy brush. And it kind of like the beautiful thing about that. And if you don't get the crazy effects from the messy brush, let me actually show you with a more colorful color. the thing that you have to do is go to brush settings and go to color dynamics and fuck around with this shit, which is the hue jitter, saturation jitter, and brightness jitter. And what that means is that every single brush stroke over here, you can kind of see it changes its color. So you can actually do that with any brush. For example, let me show you what happens if you do it with a brick. You go to hue jitter, saturation jitter, it just makes every single brush stroke. But really the messy brush is the best to do that because it already has this really nice kind of like edge. So that's what I use for all of my messy brush strokes, and I actually have a tutorial on my YouTube, so make sure you check out that for my messy approach. And then we have my Messy 2. Now a Messy 2 is a great combination with Messy 1. Naturally from the name, and you can kind of see it in most of my backgrounds with the stylized portraits. This right here with the blue is done by the Messy brush, and all I do with that is I just kind of click one time and it just produces these random kind of like flowers and abstract shapes, and it's great for backgrounds. And this right here is an example of an underpainting and a final. So this underpainting right here was done with Messy 1. This is kind of like, I'm just looking for those rich colors, and then with the brick brush on top I just add all the form and structure. But again, I'm not really recommending this if you're a total beginner. You're just gonna fall on your ass. But you know, it's a cool thing to kind of experiment with. And then we have the cloud brush. Now the cloud brush is what I use for all the soft clouds. Like sometimes if I just want to paint like a quick cloud, I'll just kind of go like this. I'm gonna do more tutorials in the future, but it's a really useful kind of like soft brush. But for all these really detailed clouds that you actually see right here, I'm gonna use these already made cloud brushes. So if you go down to all of my different brushes, you can kind of see the clouds right here. Like boom, and then you immediately got a fucking ready couch. But make sure you understand perspective because it's just gonna look goofy as hell. And then finally we have cubes. I don't know why this is named sketch, but it's supposed to be named cubes. And I actually didn't pull up the example of that cube brush, so let me pick it right now. And it's something that I recently found and I've been using more and more. It's pretty much for landscapes like this. Again, it's not really like a beginner sort of brush, but it produces like these really great textures and kind of like shapes and stuff. And in this artwork right here with the deer, I used a combination between the cubes and this really like random ass brush and then this triangle right here. But the cubes is pretty much my standard where when it comes to like this random kind of like leaves and stuff, because you can kind of see how it produces all these random colors. And it's also amazing for actually producing YouTube thumbnails. So if you see my YouTube thumbnails, that was also done with that brush. And then I also have this writing brush, like if you ever want to write something, because you know in my live streams I actually write stuff, so that you have that as well. And then that's pretty much for my top 10 brushes. Now let's go over my different approaches. Bro, why can't I fucking delete these layers, man? What's going on? Okay, so we have the basic approach, which I showed you, which is the sketch brush, brick brush, highlight. Then we have the soft approach, which is kind of like a more of an intermediate thing. I pretty much start with the brick brush, and then I use a combination of the round brush and the brick, but pretty much again 80-90% is done with the brick. And then we have my messy approach, which is just taking this thing and transforming it slowly into a painting. And then I have my stylized approach, which is just a sketch, and then I just use flat colors and I use the round brush just to kind of like have the basic colors and all that. And then I also have a landscape approach where I use a combination of a sketch brush, brick brush, and a lot of these texture brushes. So if you ever see me draw a tree or birds or any of that shit, just make sure you know that I didn't do that. Actually, a brush did it. You know, like all these trees and stuff are just pre-made brushes. So it's how you cheat the system, baby. And that's pretty much for all of the different approaches and all of the different brushes. Make sure you rewatch the videos so you can get like more of an idea and stuff. And also, I don't know if you know about my Patreon, but just a little plug right here. I have this whole Patreon where I'm doing like tutorials and I'm doing extended versions, and I really have like a whole schedule and different type of exercises. So the thing that I really hated about just being a beginner and stuff is that people told you different shit, like use this brush or use that fucking brush. And the thing that I'm trying to develop right now is really like a system on how to get better. So I've developed this thing where, you know, I've been getting people better for like a year now. So make sure you check out my Patreon. There's going to be a button below this video, or just go to patreon.com/AngelGanev. And inside you're gonna find all these different tutorials. I do weekly live streams, 2-3 hours, where I go after your work and I really explain what you're doing wrong. I talk about, you know, your mistakes, what you need to focus on. And I also have 100 mail references where, you know, I share with you all the different references that you need to study. So you pretty much have all of the references, you have all of the tutorials. All you need to do is just practice. And if you join my $5 tier right here, I actually didn't open it up. Well, if you join my $5 tier, you're gonna get all of my PSDs, all of my steps, all of my references. And if you join the $10 tier, you're gonna get all the tutorials, time lapses, critiques, references, all of that stuff. So make sure you check it out, patreon.com/AngelGanev. I really appreciate you, and make sure you check your emails. I'm gonna be sending you more tutorials in the future. So, you know, your boy out here spamming your ass. But I appreciate you, and I hope to see you someday, my Patreon, baby.